And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Arcane Radio. I'm Sean the Fort Chop Forker, joining you tonight on this special Saturday night edition of the show. Tonight we're going to be talking about horrifying Bigfoot encounters, scary Bigfoot tales to give you goosebumps. And I think it's going to be a fun show, something a little lighter than what we've been talking about. But before we get into all that, I'm joined, as always, by the everyman over at Phantoms and Monsters, the editor-in-chief, the Grand Poobah, Lon Strickler, and Mr. Butch Witkowski. Guys, welcome to the show tonight.
Good evening, sir.
Well, you got your shit together tonight anyway.
Oh, I'm telling you what, we got everything firing off. You know, all this traveling I've been doing for work and last night for personal pleasures, these updates catch up to you. And there's nothing worse than getting ready to go live and an update failing, and then you have to go and redo everything. In fact, you and I had a problem right away tonight when we got on there. It took us a couple minutes. So I apologize for...
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Damn. Well, see, Skype's putting advertising on now. And you told me that's right, Microsoft had bought them, so now they're using advertising on there. So, of course, you know, that's taking up bandwidth, too, so...
It's crazy.
Whatever.
And, you know, we always appreciate you sticking with us through all these technical difficulties. But, you know, we do provide you a good quality show at free of charge. So sometimes you get what you pay for. We still love you. But it's sometimes it's a pain in the ass to get this going. But it is what it is. And tonight we're here. And before we get into the horrifying Bigfoot encounters, why don't we talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, Lon, Butch. We got some interesting things coming down the pipe today.
Well, we've had since the last time we did a show, we've had two more sightings out in Chicago, and one was actually a second sighting around the Adler Planetarium. That was a witness who contacted me, and you know, it was a good sighting. I mean, he basically verified the previous sighting a week before that at the Adler Planetarium, and this was one from the same night, same time. So he saw the same thing. And then we had another one last Friday night. Gentleman over at and this is what gets me. He was a security guy over the Owl Bar, which, you know, the Owl, which is kind of funny because you know my story with owls, and he gave a very interesting report because he was outside and he said he was leaning up against the wall. It's about 10:30 in the evening, and this was the 30th of June. This was in the Logan Square area, 2500 block of North Milwaukee Avenue. And he said it was alone at the time. He said a few people walking up and down the street. He said he noticed a large bat-like creature flying above the street lights. He said it was about 60 to 70 foot away. And it was across the street. There used to be a building there, but had just been leveled. And it's a lot. And he said this thing was flying over the front part of the lot. And he said when he looked at it, the thing wasn't looking at him, but it was kind of had its head turned toward the other way. And he noticed something that we haven't gotten before. A pointed crest coming out extending from the back of the head. And he said it was similar to a pterosaur. You know, like you see like a pterodactyl. And he didn't see eyes or anything. But the description of the body was it was about 5.5 foot in length, the body, and it was grayish in color because it was well illuminated because of the street lights. He said the head was human-like, but much thinner, just like the one we got in Lincoln Park, and had that pointed crest. And he said that the body tapered to the back, and it looked like there were short legs or appendages tucked up underneath it. And the wingspan was about 8 to 10 foot. The wings were bat-like membrane, but heavy like that of a pterosaur. So the witness noticed that the being flapped its wings to gain speed and height, and then it would glide. So there was no sound, He said as it went by him, it flapped, got a burst of speed, and went up in the clouds. So he got a pretty good look at it, and unfortunately, he said his phone was inside the bar charging at the time, because he said he grabbed for his phone, he realized he didn't have it, and but he was pretty convincing, and he wouldn't embellish on it or anything. So this was a good sighting, and it had a little bit of different flavor to it, but it was a good sighting.
Very strange. I just put in the chat, Terra people. Like, are we seeing something completely different now?
That's the first time I got the description of it coming off the back of his head. Now, of course, I personally believe that we're dealing with more than one. I think minimum 2, maybe 3. Where they're coming from, I don't know. I was reading some interesting things last night having to do with Lake Michigan and possible portals in Lake Michigan, underwater portals that open up, and a few other oddball things. I don't know if that's the case. I did mention once before that one of the sightings had a green UFO associated with it. Others had flashing that came from the south. These portals have been known to open in Lake Michigan, in the area of the Michigan Triangle, if you're familiar with that. And when these portals open up and people see craft coming out of the water, it's associated. There are a lot of green flashes and green orbs associated with it. So I don't know if that has any kind of connection or not, but it's something I'm going to be looking into.
Well, it gets more and more interesting every time we get a report. We've had a lot of people comment to us over the weeks about what's going on there. Some people frustrated that we're not being hard enough on witnesses. Some people frustrated that we're not getting more reports. And I think we've been getting quite a few reports, to be honest with you. But I think what's frustrating you and I and Butch is that we just don't have an answer to what it is. Because this is a different, again, yet another different sighting, different type of sighting that we've experienced and we've received.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. We had that layoff of about 10 days. Nobody had made a report. That doesn't mean it wasn't out there. But now we have gotten the last 2 reports for people that have that waited a couple of days before they reported it. In fact, the one before that was a couple who had waited a month. So people are kind of hesitant, of course, to report it. I guess if somebody got a photo or something of it, they'd report it quicker. But then again, that may be a situation where somebody won't report it at all, figuring they're going to monetize off of it somehow. The media and the city itself, they've been pretty quiet. And that's something else I'm looking into. I'm just a little surprised that people are associated with the city and the media are just not wanting to say anything. So, I guess it all goes into this, but, it's one of these things where we just got to wait and see, if something falls in our lap that kind of gives us an idea of what the hell's going on, then we'll follow up on it. I mean, but so far, we haven't really gotten a smoking gun yet, but we've gotten excellent descriptions and very good witnesses.
And to be honest with you, it's too far for me to just get in my car and go and investigate. It's
same here.
It's a different type of investigation. We have to rely on investigators in that area to get us information.
And we've got some good ones out there. Yeah, I mean, I've got people out there that are helping it tremendously. I mean, and of course, Manuel's been getting reports as well. So, I mean, we're getting to talk to people. We're getting people to look into areas. I think right now there are 3 of us that are looking at things, and maybe some other groups, but they're not really saying much. I guess when they get some info, they'll let me know about it, or won't let me know about either one. I don't know. So we'll see. It doesn't seem anybody else is reporting anything. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Well, and that's all we can do. Report on what we get, disseminate what we get, and then we'll go from there. And who knows where this is going to lead us, what kind of path this is going to lead us down. We've already come up with some pretty interesting reports, some pretty interesting theories. Now we just got to wait and see what ultimately culminates in all this.
Yep.
But what else did you have to talk about before we jump into the?
Well, Butch got a report today. You want to talk about that, Butch?
Yeah, Butch.
Our bipedal buddy has made another sighting.
James
this time
Baker?
up in
Poor James.
Poor James. Anyway, up in Mifflin County, the sighting date was the 4th of July this year, approximately 11:10 a.m. Number of witnesses 2. Resident and a friend of his who live in the Wykert, PA area were on a designated hiking trail in the Bald Eagle State Park when they heard something walking to their right in the woods as if it was following them. They looked on several occasions in that direction but saw nothing and continued to hear the noise as if something was walking parallel to them. Their first thought it might have been a deer, but then the substantial noise that was coming, the second guess was it couldn't have been a bear. Now, the one gentleman was armed with a .40 caliber Glock pistol, so they continued and heard a sudden stopping noise, and the noise just ceased. They stopped to look around. There was nothing visible to their right or left. Then they turned around to look behind them, and approximately 50 yards behind them stood a large animal they first thought was a bear standing on its hind legs, but quickly realized it was not a bear. Witness description was a large wolf-like head with short pointed ears, 8 to 10 foot tall, long muscular human-like arms and hands, massive chest, very thin around the waist area, muscular legs, and the knees down what looked like the dog's hind legs hocked. Its coat was very short and dark brown, could have been black, but it looked brown. It made no movement toward them, but just kept staring at them with what is described by the witness as bright yellowish eyes. They started back to the area where they had left their vehicle and looking back constantly, but it was not there. But again, they heard the following to the right, parallel to where they were walking, and there was noise as before emitting from the woods. Upon arriving from their vehicle, to their vehicle, there stood in the tree line watching them as they stayed and was still and just stayed there until they left the area. One gentleman is familiar with the woods. He works with DCNR, and he would also like to remain anonymous, of course, because of his job. But he did leave us contact information if we needed more information. His companion, on the other hand, is shaken up to the point where I think he's just about ready to sell his hiking boots.
Oh, wow.
The description is as all that we've gotten, no different. The terrain up there is very heavily wooded and heavy undergrowth.
Mm-hmm.
And Bald Eagle State Park, it just connects to so many different state parks and forests. And directly west of that sighting area is where we had the one sighting where the young lady watched it standing at her pond for about 10 or 15 minutes. So this is just about when they started in previous reports. They seem to start toward the middle or the end of the summer and go into the fall. And then they're kind of silent during the winter and spring. So there we go. It's on the list.
You know what I find interesting, guys, is the last couple of years, the amount of people that have worked with the DCNR that are coming forward to report strange creature sightings in the woods of Pennsylvania. I mean, there's been a number of them.
This is the third one, Pennsylvania.
And, I had a gentleman make contact with us a couple years back about a Bigfoot sighting that they had. And you know, again, these guys work for the Fish and Game, the DCNR. Like, these are the kind of reports that are telling to me, because they're gentlemen or women that are used to working in a professional outdoor setting, very familiar with the creatures that inhabit the woods of Pennsylvania, the wildlife of Pennsylvania, and they see something that they can't explain. Why do people have a hard time with that? Like, that, there would never be a better example of an expert witness. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so telling. I don't understand why people have a hard time with those sighting reports.
And it's kind of funny because in the last, I think, Lon, 3 months, we've gotten 2 contacts from the DCNR, and both individuals are willing to help.
Well, so, Butch, another thing that's funny about that, and you and I have just talked about this, you know, a couple months ago, is the amount of people that have retired from law enforcement that want to be a part of what we're doing. It's amazing that these guys want to put their skills to use in a field where we desperately need this type of investigation. And it's incredible. So this is an expert report in my mind of what we're talking about here. I'm familiar with the area that you guys are talking about. My wife's family had a cabin out that way, and it's pretty. It can be pretty wild out there.
Yeah, well, I was doing some searches today in the areas, and it's as heavily wooded, if not more, because there's a lot of heavy undergrowth there than Clearfield County. And it seems like there are very few walking trails or fishing streams there, unlike Clearfield County and other Clinton County and other counties. But you know, it's the distance. I mean, if we just think about it just for a second, you know, we got the strange screams happening up in your area, and you draw a line down to that area. It's not very far. And then you draw a line over to Port Matilda, where we had the sighting of the creature by the pond, and take that point and take it up to Clearfield. It's not a very, very big area at all. And all these state parks and state forests, they all connect to each other. I mean, they're all connected one way or another.
To make that trip, you're talking about an 8 or 9 hour trip to make a complete circle.
Yeah,
through there, don't you think? I mean, so it's not. I mean, it's not a large area, but it's a large area. I mean,
oh yeah. If you did a circle, if you made a circle and came back to where you started, absolutely 8 or 9 hours. But line of flight, not that far.
No. I think that's what people take for granted.
I think this particular sighting, and that's why I was talking to Butch about it last night. It sounds to me like this thing had was protecting something. You know, maybe a juvenile or whatever. But you know, the fact that it circled past them and got to the location where they ended up at, this thing was keeping an eye on them.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, this thing was. You know, I really believe it was watching something.
Well, and I had asked the witness if he heard any noise in the woods while they were walking down through, or when they made their turnaround and come back. He said no. He said pretty much we went all the way down. We didn't hear anything at all. And then when they made their turnaround to go back toward the vehicle, that's what the minute they turned around and started going back is when the noise of something walking. And like the guy said, he said, my first thought was a deer. But he said then it was just too heavy, too much noise for a deer. And then that's when he figured it might have been a bear. And even when they didn't see it behind him, his first thought was it was a bear standing up. But he said that changed real quick.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Well,
that's a good story. And again, these are the things I talk about. When, you know, I sound like a broken record here. Expert witness testimony from experienced field people, and they don't get much better than that. And it goes right into that, and fits right in that area, Butch. The Lichen Loop.
Yeah, it's right there.
More to come on this one, folks. But guys,
and we have.
Go ahead, Butch.
Until this day, we have nothing outside that loop.
True.
Historical reports. But I mean, as far as recent reports outside that loop, we have none.
Yeah, within the last 2 years, they're all within there. I mean, it's for whatever reason, however it's getting there or what it's doing there. I mean, it's a big area, but still, I mean, they're staying within that area itself. But you know, if you look at the area from top to bottom, and I'm talking like from the Maryland line in southern York County up and the whole way up above Clearfield. I mean, it's a lot of territory, and it's a lot of places to hide. I mean, there are at least 5 sets of ridges that are, you know, that are in that area. I mean, full mountain ridges and valleys. So, you know.
Oh yeah, you got caves, you got tunnels, you got old mines. You have a ton of abandoned properties up through there. I mean, it's going to be a busy season, I think.
We'll see.
You have to get some boots on the ground out there, guys. We got a team assembled here now. We got guys itching at the bit to get out there and look at some stuff.
Oh yeah, I've gotten letters and emails and phone calls from at least half a dozen volunteers that actually live in the area, and they're either ex-law enforcement or current law enforcement, or they were involved somehow with working in the wooded areas.
It's great stuff, what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I know what you're looking for, too. So tonight's show is about horrifying Bigfoot encounters, and we wanted to spend some time on this because, one, it's a fun subject, because who doesn't like to get the shit scared out of themselves? And and it's getting to be bedtime for some of our folks out there, so we got a little bit of time here to talk about some of these. And I'll read you one first, guys. This has been my absolute favorite one for a while, and it's very chilling. And I'll go ahead and read this, and folks, go ahead and get yourself some nice tea, and as Uncle Fork Chop reads you a bedtime story. Now, this is from the BFRO website, and I read this. It's from the year 2004. All right, in the spring of April 3rd, in Texas, Panola County, and I'm going to read the narrative right off the BFRO website, so you guys know I'm not going to embellish any of this. And it's in the Sabin River bottoms. I was hog hunting from a tree stand next to the Sabin River. I had gone to my stand at around 5:30 a.m., put out apple slices and table scraps to hold the hogs for a few minutes for a shot. I got in my tree stand and waited for the woods to settle down and the sun to rise. At sunup, I heard hogs rooting around, working the river's edge towards me. I could first see them to my left at about 45 degrees, about 50 yards out. No clear shot, waiting for them to get to my bait area, I noticed movement to my right about 80 yards out. Putting my rifle scope on it, I could see only the side of something's face. It was dark, hair-covered, and slowly moving its head around looking in the direction of the hogs. At this time, it quickly moved to another tree. I could see most of its body. It was huge, standing on 2 legs, slowly looking around the tree at the hogs. At this time, I was quite afraid, but tried to keep my scope on it to study its features. The hogs were still feeding towards my bait area, and the animal was working towards the hogs. It moved quickly, and it disappeared. It quickly reappeared, moving to another tree, still looking at the hogs. I could again study its features. At this time, I was quite afraid to keep my. But I tried to keep my scope on it. Its movement from tree to tree was a quick leap, landing at the base of the next tree on 2 feet. Standing behind the tree and slowly looking around at the hogs. This continued for several minutes until they were about 30 yards apart and almost directly in front of me at about 40 yards. The animal dropped to all fours, bunched up its rear legs, and leaped. It took 2 leaps to reach the hogs, and it screamed during the second leap, causing the hogs to panic for a split second. The second leap ended with it slapping one hog on its side, knocking it through the air into the side of a tree. As the squealing hog bounced off the tree, it pounced on it, beating it with its fists like a person pounding on a desk. I could hear bones crunching with each hit. All this happened very fast, about 4 seconds from first leap to the dead hog. The quickness of the attack was very unnerving. The 3 live hogs were in full flight. The animal picked up the dead hog, tucked it under its arm, and started walking off and let out a noise like a grrr, whoop, 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 whoop. It was immediately answered from about 200 to 300 yards out by a shorter whoop, whoop, whoop. After a couple more steps in the direction of the answer, it stopped, dropped the hog, and turned to look past me. It turned back to my tree, and it raised its head to look at me. I have never been more afraid in my life. I tried to keep the scope on its head in case it came after me. It looked at me, cocked its head to one side. Its face had a curious expression as if studying me. It opened its mouth, showing its teeth, letting out a soft murr sound. It then turned back to pick up the hog and walked off in no hurry as if I didn't exist. I was looking through it at a 3x9 scope, originally set on 3 power for the hunt, but it turned up to 9 power after first trying to see the object approaching from my right. After that time, I was afraid to make the movement necessary to take scope off 9 power. I sat in my tree stand for another 30 minutes or so trying to calm myself. After concluding that if it wanted me, it would have already slapped me out of my tree stand, I got down and went to find my hunting partner, who was about a quarter to a half mile away. He heard the attack scream and both whooping calls. What do you think about that story, guys?
Yeah.
I thought it was him, not me.
I would have had a heart attack in my tree stand.
Now, I wonder how many people would have took a shot. And then again, you know, every time I hear something like that, nobody wants to take a shot at it.
No, but it's the same thing with a camera, right? They see this, and it's almost like you're just so caught up in the moment, either through adrenaline or fear, that you're just afraid to move. I don't know if you're even thinking about it in that moment. Like,
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you know, it seems like that to me. And when people see these things, you know, because you know nowadays, of course, there's the means to take a shot with it, but people just don't. Like you say, they don't even think about it. It doesn't even dawn on them.
But you're seeing something that doesn't exist for the first time, right? And you just witnessed it kill a freaking hog. Like, the first thing I'm not going to think about is pulling the trigger to put one down. I mean, I'm not a hunter, but I wouldn't think that. Go ahead, Butch.
Well, what I was going to say was, you know, I had that problem when I first started with these bipedals. You know, how would I get a picture? Because, like you said, you're going to possibly see something you've never seen before or thought existed, and you're not going to worry about the camera. That's going to be the last thing on your mind. So I guess that's why we went with everything automatic, that the cameras will keep rolling no matter what happens. Plus the body cams that we're wearing, you know, everything's going to be recorded. So even if we do come face-to-face or do spot one, we don't have to worry about, you know, somebody grabbing a camera and taking a shot. The surveillance cameras and the digital and the FLIR cameras will be doing the work for us. But that I find, you know, almost even with UFO sightings, you know, great sightings and great descriptions. And did you get a picture? No, I forgot all about my camera. Or, you know, some of the Bigfoot sightings where, you know, they just don't get a picture. They give you a description, everything, what happened, how big, what it looked like, blah, blah, blah. But they never get to that point where they actually had the camera in their hands and picked it up and used it. And if they did, they were shaking so bad, all you got's one big blurry green field.
Yeah, we hear it all the time, man.
Yep.
Hear it all the time. You know, you know, people get on Facebook or send me emails. Well, when are we going to see a picture? When are we going to see a video? Well,
get out there and take one.
It doesn't work that way. I mean, you know, it just doesn't work that way.
I wish it did.
Anyway.
I wish
I
it
did
did
too, but it just
doesn't.
doesn't work that way.
And I'm not saying that for a lazy excuse of not having any evidence. I'm just saying, put yourself in that position and just think about it. Seriously, not even be, you know, trying to be super cock out there. Just think about it, you know. Put yourself in that position in the moment, and think about your ability to be able to do what you're asking somebody to do. I just don't know if it's possible, because I don't think our brains are wired that way.
Right. Well,
here's one of my favorites. It's
so that
called
was
the
mine.
Ruby Creek.
Ooh, Ruby Creek. Go ahead. Story time with Butch.
Jeannie Chapman was startled one afternoon in September of 1941 when her young son came home terrified, claiming to have seen a cow coming out of the woods next to the house. Perplexed as to why a cow would have her child so scared, Jeannie walked out onto the porch where she saw a very large, dark-shaped figure moving through the woods and the underbrush. Thinking it was a bear, she called the other two children inside, but after realizing it had been spotted, the creature raised up on its full height on two legs and stared straight ahead at the shocked family. Jeannie realized that this was no bear. Instead, she described it as a giant man covered in dark brown hair. The huge beast began to head toward the home, and Jeannie grabbed the kids and they took off down the road to the nearby town where she took some refuge with friends. There she exclaimed that her husband George would soon arrive home from work and the creature may be waiting for him. Luckily, by the time George did get home, the Bigfoot was gone. But his home had been destroyed. The front door was smashed in, a 55-gallon drum of dried fish had been smashed open, and most of its contents were eaten. After reuniting with his family, George gathered a group of men with guns and dogs to wait in his house the next night to see if the creature would return, and while at one point in the night the dogs went berserk, nobody ever spotted the creature. Only its huge footprints in the dirt the next morning. The Chapmans, no longer feeling safe in their own home, moved away from Ruby Creek the following summer. But this is not where the story ends. Some Native American traditions state that to see a Bigfoot is a bad omen, and those who encounter one will die soon. The Chapmans' youngest daughter died of an illness just the following year, and their two sons, as well as Jeannie and George, were all drowned when their canoe capsized in a river. Every member of the Chapman family was dead just 3 years after their Bigfoot encounter.
Shit, I saw a Bigfoot. I hope to God nothing happens to me. That's been 30 years ago, though, so I think I'm okay.
You're up, Lon.
Well, I'm going to read some of what we got in by some of the listeners. Mm-hmm. Here's an account by a gentleman named Blaine. He said, in May 2016, I hiked a seldom used park trail in Ottawa Valley region around 9 a.m. About midway, I came across a small 5-foot arch of a young tree that bent over the trail. The tree was only an inch or so thick and could have been naturally occurring. I took a couple pics, walked under the arch without disturbing it, and continued on. The hike continued on to its end point, a small resting spot with a picnic table and fire pit. At that point, I rested a bit, took off my GoPro because of the killer headache I had, and said it was an uneventful hike on a nice spring day, which was reward enough. So on the way back, I had to pass the arch again. However, this time I decided to move a small branch instead of ducking under it. Within 5 steps from the arch, out of nowhere, extremely loud and very close tree bash occurred right behind my head at the tree on my right, only 4 foot away. It was so close that I felt parts of the tree or branch bark hitting me. Anyways, I froze waiting and thinking of what to do since I had no weapon, not even bear spray because I was in a park. I never had a Sasquatch do this to me before. Seconds passed, which seemed like hours until I finally walked ahead 15 foot into a clearing on the trail. The Bigfoot was right on me, so I broke a tiny branch off a nearby tree and did a very soft wood knock, hoping it would realize I was not there to harm him or compete for territory. At this point, I did try to get some footage with my cam, but just turning it on around in my hand. However, my safety was the key concern, so I had to settle with whatever I got during those few shots. Anyways, the soft wood tap seemed to work, so I continued on heading out of the park. After 10 minutes of hiking, I came to an S-turn in the trail that was close to the parking lot. After the S-turn, the trail opened up while passing the lake during the last 100 meters of the hike. However, the S-turn was a choke point, and sure enough, my luck ran out. I could hear then smell the Bigfoot come up to my right and was within 10 foot of me, 10 feet at the first part of the S-turn. At this point, I could think of nothing else I could do since it was not satisfied with escorting me out and leaving. So when it got too close at the final turn, I just reached my snapping my head right and snarling back over my shoulder at it. Either that worked or I got scared off by the clearing ahead, but I made it back to the parking lot. So I've experienced rocks thrown, vocalization stumps, and super loud wood knocks, and being softly bumped into. It must have known smashing the branch that hard and so close to my head that branch would shatter and parts of it would hit me. Anyways, all I could see on the footage is a stationary gray-haired 6-foot bent-over biped figure hiding behind a tree. But you can make out the arm because of the bend at the elbow and part of the lower leg. I still put together a video on this, but in this case, narration might be better. So that's it. That's pretty damn close.
That's it. That's enough.
Yeah, that was pretty close, and I was up in Ontario. That's pretty interesting. We got another here from Tom here in PA. 15 years ago while spring turkey hunting in southwest Pennsylvania. I went into the woods around 3:30 in the morning so that I could be situated by 4 a.m. Without the use of a flashlight, I slowly climbed a long hill. When I reached the top, I continued on for 25 yards, then turned around and faced the direction which I had came. I sat down at the base of a large stream. Within 5 seconds, something let out a huge scream. It was only about 80 to 100 foot away and coming directly from where I had just walked through 30 seconds ago. Apparently, I had walked right past it and it had followed me. It had been following me. This first scream sounded somewhat like a mountain lion or a leopard roar, and my first thought was mountain lion. It let out another scream that sounded less cat-like, but still had a little of that tone. After that scream, it began to let out horrific screams, but a totally new, very mad, mean sound. And this was continuously for about 10 minutes. These roars were earth-shattering, and it was apparent that it was getting very angry, very agitated, because I wasn't running off. It was also very apparent that the screams were being directed at me. My car was straight back beyond it, so I sure wasn't headed in that direction. I could hear it walking around while it was doing the screaming, and it was also either picking up large limbs and breaking them or breaking large live tree limbs. The screams and roars were loud enough that I'm sure they could have been heard a mile away. I had a 12-gauge shotgun with number 4 shot shells in it, and I was thinking the whole time that I was under gun for whatever it was. It was pitch black, and I could barely see the end of the barrel, and my fear was if this thing attacked, I was only going to be able to fire at point-blank range. The safety was off, my finger was on the trigger. The encounter continued without interruption for over 10 minutes, and then everything went silent. At that point, I thought it might be sneaking in behind me as I heard a twig snap about 50 foot behind me. After that, I heard not a sound. All animals in the forest were totally quiet. Not even a bird chirped, even after it got daylight. After it got daylight, I started back for my car with a gun at the ready, but saw nothing. It was a couple of years before I went back to that location to look around. At that spot it took place, I found several young saplings that were snapped off about shoulder high. They were about the size of my wrist and upper forearm. It was not much interested with any Bigfoot stuff back then, and really had no idea what I was up against. I've hunted for over 45 years and have traveled to 9 countries pursuing my love of outdoors, hunting, fishing, hiking, etc. I've been bluff charged by bears in Alaska, and I have other scary events, but this by far was the most intense. It was after I ruled out everything natural or normal in Pennsylvania that things started to make sense, sort of. Butch and I heard this story before because we know the guy it happened to. So this was something that was made up.
Yes. Very knowledgeable.
Yeah, I mean, he's very knowledgeable, very forthright, knows the outdoors. I mean, he's a good guy.
So,
anybody got anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Butch.
Love it.
The LaFleur County Massacre.
Oh, my God. Hunubby, Oklahoma.
Yep. Oklahoma seems to be a hotbed of violent human Bigfoot encounters, as can be seen with this historical account. The Choctaw Native American tribe had long known of Bigfoot. They worshipped them in their legends and had lived alongside of them for many years, so they were not concerned when they would occasionally steal supplies from their camps. However, when a child went missing in the dead of the night in 1855, followed by another, and then more, the Choctaw knew that action needed to be taken. Their weapons were not powerful enough to handle the creatures, so they sought out help from other settlers in the area. This was a time when relations between the settlers and the natives was anything but amicable, and they were laughed off by many for their silly superstitions. But there was one man who listened, Army Cavalry Captain Joshua LaFleur, who was part Cherokee and was respectful of the native beliefs. Besides, if they were willing to ask for help, then he knew there must be a good reason. LaFleur organized a party of natives and settlers, all armed with rifles designed to bring down buffalo, and they headed out to find the child stealers. The group hacked their way through the unforgivable Oklahoma wilderness for days until they eventually came across a gigantic mound of dirt littered with what were the gnawed bones of children inside. As the men tried to process the horrific scene, 4 of the creatures charged from the forest area into the ambush. Carnage ensued, with the result being many of the men, including LaFleur, lying dead, as well as 4 Sasquatch. The remaining Indian native warriors gave all the dead a warrior's burial and burned the bodies of the dead Bigfoot to ash as a show of vengeance. The story may seem fanciful, but military records do show a Captain Joshua LaFleur of Choctaw heritage was in service in that area from 1830 till his death in 1855. His death is listed as happening in 1805 in military records in Oklahoma Indian Territory, and Native Americans have long held and told Bigfoot stealing away children to eat. That's it. I'm going to bed.
You said, and it was LaFleur, you said, right? LaFleur.
Yep, LaFleur.
Which is actually the name of the county in Oklahoma where the folks that experienced the traumatic events of the Hunubby Bigfoot encounter, you know what I'm talking about, the family farm.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Where they were terrorized by Bigfoots over an extended period of time, trying to break into their freezer, break into their home. They actually, I think, culminated at shooting at one. And the activity there, if you ever watched the documentary Bigfootville, is about LaFleur County and Oklahoma. And, you don't think of Oklahoma often as a place where there's a lot of Bigfoot activity. But I tell you what, that place is popping.
Oh, yeah. A lot of reports.
The Cherokee, Choctaw, Osage, they've all got tradition of, having Bigfoot encounters out there. And, we actually had that Upright Canine sighting out there a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on out in Oklahoma. Believe me, when you talk Bigfoot, you don't really think of Oklahoma. They've had a lot of sightings, a lot of encounters out there.
Well, Lon, we got these books called Witnessing Bigfoot. I sent you a copy. Mm-hmm. Butch, I don't know if you got a copy or not. I'll have to try to get you off a copy.
Okay.
It's called Witnessing Bigfoot, but by Glenn, what's his last name? Bullier?
Yeah,
And
something like that.
Flesh and Blood, Native American Legend of the Devil Himself. And I'm getting ready to dive into this book because I think we want to do a show on this here very soon. See if we can get him on the program. He's from Prince Edward Island. And he's got, I mean, the book itself is 449 pages, guys.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
a thick book.
haven't started reading it yet, so maybe I need to get. Maybe we can get him on here, and maybe he can tell us some firsthand accounts.
Yeah, I mean, folks, there's all kinds of Bigfoot stories out there that make your skin crawl, make your skin peak, give you the goosebumps, and you know, we tell you these stories because they're just great bedtime stories, and we wanted to show that it was a little bit more fun than usual. But you know, these sightings happen, and to the folks that experience them, they're life-changing events. That's why, you know, we kind of provide an outlet for folks that do experience these things to come to us and tell us so we can investigate. Give them a little help, a little solace in what they see, and they're not crazy. But, damn, sometimes they're just horrifying.
Yeah.
And we just gave you a sample.
I've gotten a lot of them in the past. I mean, you know, some of them, I don't know, you can't believe that. Maybe you do. You know, there are a lot of historical accounts of these attacks by groups of Bigfoot. In fact, you know, we were talking. You know, there was a big thing about that about the SEAL team that went down into the mountains of North Carolina and killed off a whole big group of these marauding Bigfoot. But there have been other instances as well. I mean, there was that valley up in the Yukon Territory where all these miners were losing their heads because apparently Bigfoot were attacking them and ripping their heads off. They called it the Headless Valley. You know, I don't know how much of that was conjecture, but there were some people that were decapitated and killed. So I don't know how many of them were there. And you've heard, I mean, there've been other stories as well. So, you know, it's not something that, you know, not all of them are made up. You know, most legends are based on some type of truth. But, you know, I don't put it past it. You know, you know, you read these stories that David Pilates has been putting out. Not stories, but reports. People going missing in these state forests, state parks, and federal land and such. And, you know, I know he done some say this offhand. I mean, that being Bigfoot, but, you know, I really do believe that a Bigfoot may easily have been responsible for some of those disappearances. So, you know, I'm just going to put it out there.
Well, without saying more than what we should say about it, you and I have had a conversation offline with the author about his thoughts on that. And though he won't publicly say yay, I think we're along the same lines of what he feels. And that itself is telling. And look, I feel that way. You know, that's a question I get whenever I'm doing a presentation or I'm talking to somebody is, has Bigfoot ever hurt somebody? Well, hell, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, if they're killing them, they're not sure coming back to tell us about it.
Yeah.
There's no way to know.
I mean, we have heard stories of these things actually helping people, too. Mm-hmm. So
definitely.
I guess it works both ways. I mean, you know.
Tom Powell's book, The Locals, is full of it. He's got a great story about Rocky, how the guy was carried back to the foot of the trail that he hurt himself, and he was placed there so somebody would see him. And I'm not saying every encounter is a bad encounter, but folks, let's be clear, not every encounter is Harry and the freaking Hendersons either.
Yeah. I you know, you heard a lot of tales and a lot of stories. I have too, and you know, there's certain group. You know, in fact, I got a story years and years ago from a woman down in Florida, and this has to do with skunk ape, actually. back then, this was 2003. So, she said she lived down in Florida, and and although they've traveled a bit, they always felt like that was home. They were originally from New York City, but they lived down there in Florida for quite a while. And in fact, in the summer, they used to go down there a lot. Then they eventually lived down there, and they had a trailer, and they also had horse pasture and such. There was a campground, and now this is Mayaca, so this is down in Sarasota County. This is an area very well known for skunk apes. They said Mayaca was just across the other side of the pasture, and they had made friends with people who ran it. So it was late summer, and a bunch of the campers had got together because they'd be leaving soon, going back home. So a bonfire was being held that evening. So there was a trail that led into the campground from where the trailer was, and everybody had gathered at our trailer for a farewell barbecue, then moving down to the campground after for the bonfire. So after I cleaned up the barbecue mess, it was getting dark, so I was pretty much the last one to arrive. The fire was started, and we all stood around talking. It was about 9:30 p.m. I was standing beside my friend on the outside edge of the fire when I happened to look across at the tree line. There was a fence there with a low-lying palm scrub. It's divided into the other half of the pasture from the campground and back trails. As I looked in that direction, I saw two big red eyes staring back at me. The outline of this thing was pretty big, but the glow of the fire, the outline of the thing was pretty big by the glow of the firelight. The palm scrub was about 4 foot high, higher in some spots. Not taking my eyes off this thing, I quietly whispered to my friend to look in that direction and don't scream. She did, and she whispered to her husband. She said softly to the group not to make any sudden moves. We were talking softly and alerting everyone in the group about the red eyes, and everybody looked and saw what we were seeing. So there were 8 of us all totaled. My girlfriend's husband returned with a flashlight and a rifle in hand. We handed the flashlight to my friend, and I told her to shine it in at whatever it was in the scrub. When she did, this thing stood up, and it made a growling sound. My friend's husband then shot at it, and it screamed like nothing I'd ever heard before. It took off into the brush. Everybody, except me and the group, ran to get flashlights and whatever to arm ourselves with. My friend and I were told to stay by the fire. About that time, we heard the horses screaming in the pasture, and they hurried to the field. After a while, they all returned. They could not find anything and would resume the search at daylight. The next day, blood was found at the fence area, and a horse was dead. Its neck was broken and the body badly ripped apart. Searches were continued for a couple of days, and no one spoke about it, what happened. After having several things happen where I was staying, we left. This was not the only time I have encountered a large red-eyed being. I believe this was in fact a skunk ape Bigfoot that after being shot at purposely killed the horse. I have on another occasion encountered one again at night, which chased me through the woods while walking home from my friend's house. I had not known at the time that a body was found mutilated in that area and that the arms of that poor soul were torn from its body. I was lucky. And I have heard a few other instances where human bodies were tore up in that area. I mean, now, they're not going to come right out and say it was a skunk ape that did it. But, we've all seen the footage over there at Mayaca. People were driving down the road and they see these things in the field. And, there's something out there. There's no doubt about that. So this was, and in fact, this story, about a year or so later, this woman's sister contacted me and told me, and she verified the whole thing. So something did happen that night.
Mayaca area is a pretty strange place. Those palmetto leaves themselves are just crazy.
Well, it's an area that's been active. People known about it for years.
The photos have come in from there that were sent to Lauren Coleman, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there have been some videos that people have it was, I remember 4 or 5 years ago, people that were going down the road all stopped at this right there on the side of the road and were actually taking video of these skunk apes running in through the pasture.
I think I remember this now that you're bringing this up.
Yeah. So, there've been a lot of people that have reported on having encounters with these skunk apes. I mean, they seem to be a little bit more aggressive than regular Bigfoot in other locations. I think for the most part they're a little bit smaller, but I think they're a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that trend appears to confirm what I've read too, and I don't know, these mangy little Bigfoots. That's what I call them, the mangy cousin of the old Sasquatch. Well, guys, believe
if
it
you're
or
looking
not,
down at that mess, I guess you would be. I don't know.
They got all the things in there that can kill you. They can keep that shit. I've got no inclination to go poking around down there. But guys, we're out of time for tonight. Can you believe that? That hour went by very quick.
Real quick.
Quicker than the sausages at a Forker buffet, let me tell you. But next week we got Dr. Cosmic Ray Keller joining us back, talk about strange visitors in PA, the Venusians. Dr. Keller's a great guy, very personable fella, and he's got some strange stuff happening.
This is a strange story. And in fact, I encourage everybody to keep an eye on the blog because I got some photographs today. And I got the story on this situation that occurred in Pennsylvania. It's pretty odd. Well, I'm not going to say anything about it, but it's interesting. I don't know what the hell actually happened, but Reed's pretty excited about it. So we're going to get an exclusive on it.
Exclusive to you this coming week.
Because it's kind of a payback for us having him come on the show, let him come on the show and help sell his books and talk about Venus and such. And I mean, they are excellent books. I just got the other two, the newest two, the other day, and they are excellent. And
plus, he's just a nice guy. He really is.
He is a great guy, really is. And but we'll ask him and see what he has to say about these individuals who showed up at this lecture, and we'll see what he has to say about it.
Folks, arcaneradio.com for more information, phantomsandmonsters.com. Butch, go ahead and give the URL because I'm going to butcher it up as always.
Uforcop.com, UFORCOP.com, or Facebook, Twitter, and all those other good places.
That's fine. Tweet us, Facebook us, find us. We're socially active, folks. arcaneradio.com. And go to our website, which again, arcaneradio.com, and click on For the Cause and donate to one of our great partners that we're working with here. And we'll leave you with a PSA going out here for Feeding America, one of the causes I firmly believe in. No child should go to bed hungry or know where their next meal's coming from, and Feeding America goes to taking care of just that. Next week, Dr. Cosmic Ray, folks. Take it easy. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you Wednesday. Thanks for joining us on this special Saturday night edition of Arcane Radio.